This week on Filthy Hope.
I like Wrath of God. I have sat very comfortably knowing that God will avenge on my behalf, and I don't need to be that person. I can actually leave that to God. And actually it gave me a lot of peace in my early journey, knowing that my perpetrators would, God would clean the house.
This podcast is a Uniting Heart and Soul production and was recorded on land that was stolen nearly 250 years ago. On this particular episode, we recorded on the land occupied by the Gadigal clan of the Eora Nation. We pay our respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, and we acknowledge that sovereignty over these lands was never ceded. It always was and always will be Aboriginal land. At Filthy Hope, we humbly contribute to the ancient and ongoing traditions of storytelling when we share stories on this podcast. Hello and welcome back to Filthy Hope. If it's your first time here on this podcast, we love to spend time in the grey spaces where Jesus, life and culture intersect. I'm your host, Jonty, and joining me, as always, is Rev Ness.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm excited for this conversation.
Yeah.
It's going to be really good. Before we dive into the main topic of conversation for today, we both saw a movie.
Yeah.
And I feel like our Venn diagram of movie tastes very rarely crosses over, but we both saw something.
Yeah.
What was it?
I just want to tell you, I saw it first.
Yeah.
Okay?
You saw an advanced screening at the Orpheum.
I did. The Picture Palace, they call it.
Yeah.
The Movie Picture Palace.
Yeah, it's a great cinema.
Gorgeous.
I love that place.
Yeah. There was live music. There was champs on arrival. It was the perfect movie experience. And we saw Priscilla. Yeah.
Yeah. What did you think?
Oh, I loved it. I think because I'd seen the Baz version the year before and I'd actually read the book, Priscilla and Me, I think I got a bit shocked actually by how Sofia Coppola
Yep.
depicted Elvis and Priscilla's reaction to Elvis's behaviour. From somebody that was groomed as a child, I can't believe I never picked it up until I saw the movie a week or so ago.
Yeah.
You know, I just thought, whoa. It just really shocked me, Jonty, to see Elvis portrayed in another light, through another lens, a very 2024 lens, a Me Too movement lens, I would say. And to see the characters in that movie portrayed like some of the people that we know are locked up, like Ghislaine Maxwell, for grooming. Do you know what I mean? There was groomers and Priscilla's parents allowing her to go and live with Elvis as a 14, 15-year-old girl. Yeah. It blew my brain, mate. I sat there, mouth open, shocked. I don't even think I sipped my champs. I was so shocked from the opening. Yeah.
Yeah. So I knew nothing about my knowledge of Elvis is passing at best.
Right.
I saw the Baz Luhrmann Elvis movie last year when it came out with Austin, what's his name? Austin Butler.
Yeah, he was great.
And because I'm not a huge, I recognize a bit of the music, but it just kind of, I'm usually a fan of the Baz Luhrmann style of movie making, but it just kind of, it didn't really do it for me. But then that was really formed the large chunk of the knowledge that I had of Elvis and the Colonel and that whole thing. And so then going into this movie, Priscilla, which is basically entirely from Priscilla's point of view, it was all fresh and new to me. And I think, like you said, for people that may not know, it's the story of Priscilla Presley. What's her maiden name?
I can't remember.
Yeah, who's still alive and well today. She's actually an executive producer on the movie. Her experience as a young girl, essentially being groomed into a relationship with Elvis, I found it really, really conflicting to watch because on the one hand, she's 14 or 15
Yeah.
or whatever, and Elvis is clearly attracted to her.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's this weirdly sexless, quote unquote, platonic
Yeah.
thing until it isn't.
Until
When
the wedding night.
They basically get married as soon as she turns 18.
Yep.
Yeah.
She wants to be sexually intimate with him when she's living there because he's so hot, he's so famous, and he's so delicious.
And he's off.
And he says no.
Yeah, well, and he's off
He
sleeping with
other women.
movie stars and other women. Yeah,
But he's saying no, Priscilla.
Yeah.
No. You've got to. I want you to save yourself. It's like he wanted her to be some pristine, perfect, virginal piece for consumption on the wedding night, and then it was going to be okay. And even still, he was off having affairs with women after that.
Yeah.
So it's odd.
Do you think it was a
odd.
lot to do with wanting a child? Is that what she was there for in his eyes?
Oh,
I'm not sure. I haven't read the book either.
You mean that's why she was there, or?
Yeah, he wanted the perfect wife to give him children.
Wow.
I don't know.
That one didn't cross my mind. I just thought he wanted an innocent.
Yeah, because he's not going to have kids with. Well, I'm projecting here, but like the relationships and the fleeting sexual interactions that he has when he's off with the movie stars. That's not for the sake of forming a family. That's him going off and following his urges.
It's like he had a split personality in a way, wasn't he? He had like home life.
And you start to see that professional projection of who the famous Elvis is start to show up in the home life as he gets older.
Right, with that whole entourage thing, living at the home with Priscilla and all the best friends, all these mates and their wives, all hanging out at Graceland together.
Yeah.
It's like he couldn't exist without the adoration of these hanger-oners. Super weird.
Yeah.
But they were like a family for him.
Yeah, there's a couple of scenes where they're all sitting around the table. His grandma's there.
Yeah.
Is it
And
it's grandma,
and his
isn't it?
mum.
And his mum.
Yeah.
They're big home cooked meal, family style around the table.
That's it.
It feels like a big happy family. But then they jump on the bus and leave, and Priscilla's. It's like a gothic, almost like haunted house movie at different points because she's just like all like Beauty and the Beast. She's just wandering around this giant empty estate.
Yeah, that's
while
the
he's
one.
off living his dream.
Yeah.
Waiting for him to come home because he's basically
Pining for him.
groomed her into being this object that is now his, that he gets to just keep at home for when he gets home.
And he wanted her nails to be a certain colour, her hair had to be a certain colour and style. He wanted her clothing to be a particular style.
It's very critical. That she comes home wearing a different dress.
Yeah, with all the flowers on it. She'd actually started, I suppose, making decisions for herself and finding out her own identity, and it's not the identity that he wanted at all for her.
Yeah.
He told her she looked terrible in it.
Yeah. It reminds
So
do
offensive.
you ever see Vertigo, the Hitchcock
No.
thriller from the late 50s? It's with Jimmy Stewart and Kim Novak. It's one of my favourite movies. It's so good. Long story short, he falls in love with a woman who, from his perspective, dies, and then he suddenly runs into another woman who looks remarkably like her, and he spends through the kind of middle section of the movie trying to turn her into the image of the woman that he wants.
Super
so it's
interesting.
very similar. He's like, no, you can't wear that dress. You need to wear this dress, or you need to dye your hair to be this colour because then you'd be perfect. Yeah.
On a little side note, I was just reading in the paper the other day about Hugh Hefner, and Hugh Hefner's last wife has just released a book and about, life as a playmate and being the wife of Hef. And she talked about making a promise to Hugh, by Hef as they call him, by saying that she will never speak ill of him. And it took her a long time to get over post-traumatic stress disorder by living in this home where she had to share her husband with all these other women, and how he had an addiction and an appetite for Viagra. He couldn't, be intimate without Viagra. And how she couldn't even, the moment there was any regrowth in her hair, because she, as a brunette...
The roots come through.
Yeah, the roots come through. He wanted her to immediately make it blonde, snowy white again, even to the point where she describes it would burn her scalp.
Yeah, wow.
And she wasn't allowed to wear, as I describe, slut red nail polish, because my mother used to tell me that only sluts wore red nail polish. The the girls could only ever wear nude tones.
Wow.
Yeah, so he was really specific. And if you look at, if you Googled Hugh Hefner's Playboy bunnies, they all look the same.
Yeah, yeah.
There's like a whole, it's just like he had a desire for this same look.
Yeah.
That was obviously what
he
thought that the woman needed to be.
And the, go back to Hitchcock. The Hitchcock blonde is a thing.
Right?
Is a thing. And
wow.
Vertigo is almost this very rare moment of Hitchcock being a little bit self-reflexive, and it's almost commenting on this idea that every Hitchcock movie with the blonde, they all look the same and they all kind of have the same kind of place in the story. And that all of a sudden in Vertigo, there's this character going, no, you have to be blonde, you have to look like this, and it's almost, whether or not it was intentional on Hitchcock's part.
Do you think this was Hitchcock's own fantasy for what the woman should look like?
I mean, very, very clearly, if you watch enough of his movies, you kind of go, he had a thing for blondes.
Wow.
And the way that he treated a lot of the actresses in his films, I can't remember her name now, but the actress that leads in The Birds, there's lots of stories of her being treated really, really poorly on that set.
Interesting.
Like having live birds tied to her for the scene where she's like trying to swat away all the birds. That they were just birds attached to her, and she got scratched up by real birds, and he would just treat them really poorly, but had a thing for the blonde that had to be in his movie.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think of Psycho. She was blonde
exactly.
in that.
Yeah.
She's blonde in the shower, and I pull it. Oh dear.
Yeah.
How interesting.
Yeah, very interesting.
So Priscilla.
Yeah.
What would you give it out of 10?
From memory, I'd have to check my Letterboxd account, but I gave it 4.5 stars out of 5, so that's a 9 out of 10.
Oh wow.
Scaled up.
Yeah, so. I would probably agree. I rarely get to an end of a movie and think I want more, but it got to the end and I thought, oh no, please don't stop here.
Yeah.
I want to know the next piece.
You know what it reminded me of? Did you see Spencer last year about Diana?
Oh yes.
Kirsten Stewart?
Yes.
Wasn't that great as well?
Yes.
Yeah, very similar.
Yes, epic.
Yeah.
That was beautifully done, I thought, yeah.
Very narrow, kind of specifically her perspective.
Yeah. And just, I think Spencer was just about one day, wasn't it? It was just that one event.
Couple of days,
couple
over
of
Christmas.
hours. Yeah, Christmas, that's right. Oh, that was a good movie, Jonty. Yes. Yeah. Look at us, we do cross over in movies. Wow, look at us go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an interesting insight into the woman, Priscilla.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you go. If people haven't seen it, at the time this one comes out, it may not still be in theatres, but keep an eye out for it. It's directed by Sofia Coppola, who's fantastic. Yeah. So I think that's something we're going to do a little bit more of. Maybe not every week, but talk about some film or some TV.
Yeah, or a book.
Stuff that's interesting to us that we come across as we do these. Yeah. So if you've seen it, let us know what you thought as well. We'd love to hear. But today, we're going to talk about a topic that I've been curious to talk with you about for a while, and I think I put a poll up on our Instagram page a little while back, like, what do you want us to talk about on the podcast? And I forgot to note down who put this in, but we had a listener request that we talk about forgiveness.
Right.
And the flip side of that is revenge.
Oh, yes.
So forgiveness, revenge, that whole dichotomy.
Yes.
That's our topic of conversation for today. And so I thought maybe a good place to start would be both of us taking a step back into our childhood and maybe thinking about some times when we were younger, before we were kind of fully developed, some experiences of wanting to take revenge on someone where you felt like you were wronged and you were correct in going, I've got to make that right, take back what's mine, or an eye for an eye, like that kind of thinking.
Yeah, it's fun.
Do you have any initial, like, as a kid, do you remember having those strong feelings at all?
I've got none that come to mind, but as I got older, I've got a exhaustive list. As I started to unravel, I've got a really good list of stuff, but not as a little person.
Interesting.
Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, I remember he's been on the podcast before, and I'm sure he's fine with me sharing this, but my younger brother still has a stutter, but had quite a bad stutter when he was younger. And he was he's 18 months younger than me, so he fell in that February birthday of being quite young for his school year. So he was only a year below me in primary school. So we kind of, our friends crossed over a little bit. And I remember there was one kid in particular who used to bully him a lot for his stutter, and having that like just burning desire of like, that kid. Like, I don't think I ever like beat him up or anything, but like I would just give it to him. Yeah. Just call him names. Like, stop talking shit about my brother. Like, what are you doing? Like that older brother feeling of I've got to step in and act on behalf of my younger brother who's being unfairly treated.
Yeah, wow.
And it's interesting, like the way that my parents then, I think I called him a name or something, and it got back to my parents, and Dad sitting me down and saying, look, it's a good thing that you want to defend your brother, but you can't act out in that way. There are other ways of doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't think of any others off the top of my head, but that one stuck out to me.
I've got a good parent one.
Yeah.
It's sort of in the same, it's sort of like vicarious need for revenge on behalf of another.
Yeah.
So it's that whole desire for, it's revenge, isn't it?
Like mother bear type
I think
feeling.
it is, yeah. And my daughter was being profoundly bullied from about year 9, and she was bullied by another girl, and it was a case of unrequited love by this other girl. I don't think we realised that at the time. None of us picked up on that at the time. We just thought why has she all of a sudden become really mean? And year 9's a notorious period of time in female development, young girls. And we tried to help Ginge navigate it by, look, so-and-so's just having a bad day, or trying to find reasons why this kid would be doing this, because she'd been over for sleepovers, she'd, hung out at our place. I liked her. She was a great kid. And she just amped up. The more Ginger pushed away from her and Ginge fell in love with Joel, the more this girl got really amped up her bullying, to the point where it was looking like, I think spitting had started, the girl spat on Ginge walking to a class, and she came home and said, oh, Mum, so-and-so spat on me. And Rob will tell a story of dinner time, after dinner, teaching Ginger how to do self-defence in the kitchen. So a bit of basic, judo in the kitchen with Ginger. Ginger was a big, strong rep basketball player. She had shoulder girdle on her at the time. She was a strong girl and very athletic, and would wrestle with Rob, and Rob would teach her. If it ever went beyond spitting to hair pulling or punching, this is what you do. And so we prepped Ginger that way. And even though at school they were told there was a no-touch policy, you'd be instantly suspended. Yeah. If you touched another kid at school, I said to Ginger, the law will tell you that you can actually defend yourself and apply enough force just to defend yourself, but you can't go apeshit on it. You've just got to just defend yourself so you stay safe, right? Permission to do so, I'll be up at the principal's office defending you. We'll get the solicitors on board. Don't worry, babe, go hard, right? And so we would say that to her because this spitting went on, and then the next thing went to hair pulling. It's funny how it escalates like this, to hair pulling, and then Ginger was watching her best friend get brutalised in the playground, and then all the kids start watching around at that stage, and Ginger goes to defend, and then the bully girl comes over to Ginger, and Ginger, the girl takes Ginger by the ponytail, pulls her to the ground. Ginger takes her ponytail, takes her to the ground, and then pins her to a tree. Literally pinned her to the tree until the school teachers came over and had witnessed what had gone on in this period of time. That moment was, Ginger was beside herself with upset. I remember her texting Rob and telling him what had happened. He got on the Harley and you could hear the Harley coming. We didn't live far from school. And the Harley came and he just parked in the bus stop, and then out he came, stormed into school in an absolute hulkified rage that you will hurt my child, and what are you doing at school to protect my kid from this other kid? And I remember Rob just wanting to seek huge revenge on that child, because it had been ongoing. It wasn't just a one-off event. This had been going on it went on and on and on, Jonty, until the point where it didn't stop. What the school then did was they put Ginger and her friends into like protective custody during morning tea and lunch, and they had a room that was just outside the principal's office to keep them safe, so they didn't have to mix with the rest of the cohort, because this girl couldn't be stopped. And then one day the girl came up to the school and with bullies from another high school, local high school, and started to incite a bit of a riot. And it's interesting that actually the girl would get finally expelled from school when she called the deputy a really nasty swear word. The really bad one that people use, that one, to the teacher's face. It took that.
Yeah.
So you can punch a kid, you can pull a kid, you can hurt a kid, you can spit on a kid, and you won't get expelled. But you call the deputy principal that big word, and then you'll get expelled. And the revenge that I think our whole family, it kind of incited a rage in all of us, even Ginger's cousins, because this girl and this gang of people were just so unhinged. So it was awful, Jonty. And it was a really unhappy time. And all the conversations and desire to exact revenge, I think it feels really good at the time, because you feel like you're being strong, and what if we did this and we could do that and we could, let's do that. And in the moment, I think it feels good, but it just leaves you devastated, to the point where this behaviour, Ginge had to make so many police statements, literally, to the Castle Hill Police, because of the high-level instances of abuse that this girl was creating. Even in Ginger's workplace at Gloria Jean's, she went in and trashed the shop with a whole bunch of girls, and it was awful when Ginger was on a session there working. Police would be involved, and car chases and all sorts of really teenage mutant ninja turtle behaviour. It was just an awful period of her time. And yet I think that life, talking filthy hope, those life experiences and the revenge and the need for forgiveness and justice, Ginger's got this big justice streak in her, it actually led her to being a lawyer today. And she's now working in child protection. And this drove her desire to be in the law and to work in that space. So talk about filthy hope. From filthy life experience came, I suppose, real hope, because I'm watching her now save kids from parents that bully, because she now works for the DCJ. Yeah. It's awesome.
And there's that phrase, something along the lines of living well is the best type of revenge.
Right.
And I find myself, as you're telling me that story, thinking of a number of instances where, when I was younger, really feeling this deep sense of injustice at the way, that a handful of people treated me at different points in my life. And there's almost that thing where, like, they show up on Facebook or you see them on something or other, and you kind of go, isn't that sad?
Yeah.
Like, look at what your life has come to today, and almost the most satisfying part is being able to compare yourself to them now.
Yep.
Like, I'm obviously not going to drop names, but, someone in high school who was particularly vicious to me, usually to do with being a Christian, and the ironic part was that we were in a studies of religion class together, and he was at one of the I think, looking back on it, he clearly had watched a lot of Ricky Gervais and wanted to be Ricky. It's just that, like, outspoken, annoyingly aggressive atheist.
Right.
And was just, and not just to do with that, he was, I'm trying not to libel anyone, but like he spent a bit of time in jail as an adult. He's not a nice guy, and kind of every so often you see something on social media and you go, oh,
here we go.
Oh, isn't that sad?
No wonder.
Yeah, isn't that sad? And you kind of can go, I'm really glad that I always bit my tongue with him, and I never, took the bait and lashed out at him in the same way that he was just poking at me constantly.
Yep.
And I kind of go, I'm really glad that I did that, because almost the best form of quote unquote revenge is now, however many years down the track, you can kind of look at how those two paths converged for a little bit in high school and then went into very different directions.
Yeah. Interesting you should say that, because Ginger and I often say when we talk about this girl, and we know what happened with her life, and she's had what seems to be a really nice, successful life, and sorted out her who she was as a person, and it's a bit of a happy ending, which is really great. So Ginger's been able to reconcile herself to that, which is good, and I believe forgive her, although she hasn't had any, face-to-face reconciliation or anything. Ginger's got no desire, but she does joke about, I wonder if she'll ever see any of the that bully group, if Ginger will ever have to rescue their children and act on behalf of the children for the department, because they're not being such great parents. And I said, you'll be at the bench one day, and there'll be somebody that from your past, you're in the area. You can't avoid that, I'm thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, it is.
So, I mean, like most things, if you crack open the Bible, there's usually a bit of wisdom on this, and the topic of revenge is no different. There's like heaps and heaps of stuff in Scripture about revenge.
Hit us up.
I think one of the ones that I'm most familiar with is in Romans chapter 12, which I often talk about. Back when I was working in youth ministry, I would tell youth group kids Romans 12 is basically being a Christian 101. It's kind of like Paul laying out what it means to live as a Christian, basically. And in Romans 12 from verse 19, it says, "Do not take revenge, my dear friends." Pretty black and white there. "But leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, it is mine to avenge. I will repay, says the Lord."
Yeah.
And that's referencing back to Deuteronomy. And it continues, "On the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink.
Yep.
In doing this, you will heap burning coals on their head."
Love a burning coal.
So there's a lot in there.
And you don't even have to do the burning coal yourself.
No,
give them a drink.
Let's start with the burning coals thing. It's almost like the initial reading that I always have is like, so if someone's being a dick to you, just be nice to them back, because in doing that, God's heaping burning coals on their head. We won't dive super deep into. There's lots of stuff in Scripture about the imagery around coals and what that might mean, but just purely in a literal sense, by being nice or being not taking the bait, we might say, in response to someone antagonizing you, that's actually the best way at getting back at them. You could read this. And then my question then is, well, is there a difference in how we treat people nicely if we're doing it genuinely because we want to meet hate with love? Or is it because we're actually kind of going, by doing this,
I'm doing
I
coals.
get to get back at you. And then part of me also goes, is there a difference? Does it matter?
Yeah.
Does the action itself actually, is that the thing that counts, regardless of why you're doing it? I don't know. It's interesting.
I think you wouldn't want to, maybe Paul is saying that because Jesus was a peacemaker. It's a part of the Beatitudes, isn't it? It's a part of being a peacemaker, somebody that isn't vengeful, that is full of love and grace, is probably why he's saying it. Let the wrath of God be God's. You don't have to do it. God's promises back in Deuteronomy that he's going to, sort you suckers out.
It's mine to avenge.
Yeah, let me do that piece. Yeah. All you've got to do is continue to love and let the nasty piece sit with me. And I know I've said this before, Jonty. I've often wondered if God would, because I love the wrath of God passage.
Well, lots of people don't.
I know, heaps don't. And we were talking earlier about that song. Is it Cornerstone?
In Christ Alone.
Christ Alone. And they talk about the wrath of God will satisfy. And I remember in one of the places I was at, they wanted to take that verse out and change the lyrics around that.
On that cross, as Jesus died, the wrath of God was satisfied.
Yeah, that's right. I like wrath of God. I have sat very comfortably knowing that God will avenge on my behalf, and I don't need to be that person. I can actually leave that to God. And actually it gave me a lot of peace in my early journey, knowing that my perpetrators would, God would clean the house, and I don't need to do anything in regards to that. How hard is it though?
I quite like, though, as someone that really always has shrunk away from conflict.
Yep.
It's almost like that's an excuse to not have to get into conflict.
Oh, right.
Because you can kind of go, it's not actually for me to deal with. And this is a fault of mine that, like, you know, I probably should be better at conflict. But in those cases of like, oh, okay, there actually is something that needs to be dealt with, or this person's been really harmful towards me, you can kind of go, I can leave that to God.
Yep.
And my whole thing, and we've spoken about this before, and you see me do this fairly often, is let them be the dick.
Yeah.
Instead of rising to meet someone's level, and then it just escalates, if you can sit back and if in the wording of this one, instead of feeding them when they're hungry instead of continuing to be a dick back to them, eventually everyone will
recognise that
that they're the dick.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I know. I just wish it happened quicker.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. And it doesn't say it is mine to avenge and I'll do it in 3 to 5 working days.
No,
that's
right.
It's on God's timeline.
That's right.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Sometimes you've got to wait a long time for that stuff, don't you?
Yeah.
And my sister and I used to have dinner parties when we were in our early 20s. We were both newly married and really starting to unpack our child abuse stories, and we would sit together and have these dinner parties, just the 4 of us, Zoe's husband, Zoe and myself and Rob. And we would, I suppose it made us feel, I wasn't a Christian at this stage. It certainly made me feel like I had some power and control. Although I would never act on anything that we were talking about, I don't know, just to fantasize about what I would do if I could cut them into small pieces and put them in a garbage bag and drown them in the Lane Cove River. I think just the act of saying that and talking about it with somebody else that got me, being my sister, it was actually, there was like kind of a, I don't know, vindication or I don't know.
Do you think maybe that is to do with in going through something in which your agency and your power was taken away from you? It's reclaiming that,
probably,
and reclaiming a sense of like, I'm in control of this. I wonder if that's
100%. And I think also over the years I've said some really big sweeping statements about pedophiles, and I've always said to my mum, when this final one that I know is still alive, when she dies, I want to be there. I want to know, please let me know, because Mum has access to that information. Please let me know when she dies because I want to be there. I want to turn up to the funeral. And you know what? And my sister and I both talked about that. I think, I've gone past that now. I just don't care anymore. I've got to a point where that fails. It fails to meet any fulfilling desire in my own heart for revenge or anything. And I can't honestly say I've reached a point of forgiveness with her, but I care very little to do anything what would be mean and nasty, because I believe that the wrath of God, I'm watching and knowing that there'll be suffering here on earth for her right now. People know she's a pedophile. You know, she was exposed.
Right.
We did our case. So I think that in a sense is God's wrath here on earth now. She just fails to die. So, you know, she's living in it. She's living in the filth, mate. Let me tell you, she's got to survive in that.
Yeah.
So I don't have a lot of feeling about that anymore, which is that's actually interesting to clock that.
Yeah.
In a way, that feels like I've come a bit of a
Definitely
been a bit of a journey.
Some growth there, yeah.
Yeah, I don't like calling it growth because I didn't think I wasn't grown before. Do you know what I mean? I didn't want to think that feeling another way wasn't reaching the destination of what a fulfilled human being should look like or be. I think it was just a part of the journey.
It's where you were then and it's where you are now.
Right. Yeah. It's just a part of the continuum of life, and I think it's a fuller sense of acceptance of what was and what is to today, and living into my full being. And circling back to what you said about that, a song comes back into my mind. If they could see me now, I think about her. She knows I'm a reverend. She knows I'm a minister in the church. She knows that about me now. I wonder, she didn't want me to go on and become a Christian. She didn't want me to be a part of a successful life or happiness. She set about to destroy my sister and I as little people. And God had another way, had another plan. He took the filth of that section of our life and spun it and gave great hope into who and what we are today. We've both done that. I didn't need to do revenge. That's God's business.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Well, I've bloody grown up. I don't know. It's giving me the shits just saying that. Sort of looking at myself going, I don't know if I like her.
Yeah. But you're
no fun anymore.
You're in a different place than you were. Yeah. It's interesting. You, if I can go back to those dinner parties you'd have with your sister.
Yeah.
That speaks really clearly to me about not just with this sense of justice and wanting to seek revenge potentially, but like in a lot of things, there's a very real psychological thing with human beings where the anticipation of the thing is usually more enjoyable than the thing itself. We talked about this not long ago when we were coming up to Christmas, about how so often that mid to late December period is actually the best part.
It is the high point.
It's the high point, isn't it? Because it's about that anticipation.
When I make the Mariah video. That's it.
If people want to see that, go find her on Facebook. It's very funny.
It's over.
Yeah. But that applies to so many different things, whether it's like, with food, often I can't wait to get home. Or we're going to that restaurant and they have that steak sandwich that I love. And then when you eat it, it's often good, but then it's over.
Oh, it's done.
And the anticipation
was the best part.
Was the best part. And I think with this, I certainly my experience has been in the not nearly as extreme or tragic, or not tragic, I don't want to use that word to describe your experience, but I haven't experienced anything that large in terms of wanting to feel, in terms of wanting to, having those feelings of injustice and wanting to take revenge. But certainly the fantasy and the sitting around going, what I'd do to that person.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and I can't even repeat the things that we used to do.
Yeah, I can only
and
imagine.
Rob, and both our husbands, you should have seen them.
I can only imagine,
Awesome foursome, mate.
Yeah, like that is the thing that actually, and there's a whole other discussion about whether or not it's healthy to indulge in those fantasies, but like...
Probably not.
In the very few occasions that I've actually enacted on any of those things, like gone up to the person and said the things that I had thought over and drafted and redrafted in my head and gone, given them what for.
Right.
It's that same thing of like, now I've done it. It kind of feels hollow.
Yeah.
The enjoyable part or the fulfilling part was the fantasy of it. And so then I wonder, like, is the real fulfillment to be found in that thing we just read in Romans, in actually just letting those things go and laying them at the foot of the cross and just kind of going, it's not for me. I wonder. I want to use it. There's an illustration that I love that it just resonates with me so deeply that I want to share with you, and maybe for listeners that may be interested. I don't want to say spoilers ahead for anyone that has seen The Last of Us TV show or played the video game. Spoilers for part 2 and for potential future seasons of the TV show. But really briefly, I'll just outline the illustration and we'll talk about it. At the end of the first game and at the end of the first season of the show, it's a post-apocalyptic kind of humanity has collapsed after this virus has taken over the world, and the story follows Joel and a daughter-father figure. They're not biological father and daughter, but they're kind of forced together, and with this young girl, Ellie, who it turns out is immune to the virus. So it's this story of them trekking across post-collapse America to hopefully find a cure and use her because she's immune. They don't know exactly how it's going to work, but that's the thing. At the end, they realise, this is at the end of the first game and the end of season 1, they realise that to create a cure for humanity and save the world, Ellie has to die because the virus is attached to her brain. And so to create antibodies, Ellie would have to die in the process. So Joel says, nuh-uh. And he makes a really, really difficult choice to go through and shoots up the I guess it's an old abandoned hospital almost, and kills some doctors and runs off with Ellie. And then when Ellie wakes up, she says, what happened? And he says, they couldn't find a cure.
Oh. Is that how it ends?
So that's the end of season 1. That's the end of the first game. So the thing I want to talk about is in the second game, the second season of the TV show is in production now, the daughter of one of those doctors seeks revenge. And the game opens, it's in the first few hours, she finds Joel and kills him and takes revenge. From her perspective, her father is this doctor who's found a cure.
Right.
Has been working on a cure for years and years and years, has finally found an opportunity to save humanity.
Yep.
All of a sudden this random just comes in and
kills the dad,
kills a bunch of people, runs off. So she enacts revenge. We then basically, because we're playing in Ellie's point of view,
Are you telling people, our listeners, stuff they don't already know?
Well, if they've played the game, and that's why I said spoiler alert. If you've played the game, you know.
Okay, you know where this is going.
But this will probably happen in future seasons of the TV show.
Oh, right.
So you want to hunt down, her name's Abby, to take revenge because she just killed Joel.
Oh.
And the first half of the game is you as Ellie hunting down Abby to take revenge. You get to the point where she has her, and then the game forces you to go back and play as Abby for the second half of the game and empathise with her perspective of being a young girl idolising her father, wanting to take part in this movement, and then suddenly he's taken away.
This is awful.
So the point of why I want to talk about this is by the end, Abby's life has been ruined because of her taking revenge. And Ellie's life collapses as a result as well, because in taking revenge on Abby, and I won't spoil, I've already spoiled a lot, but without spoiling where it ends up, she gives up a life with a family, which then collapses, and the partner says, well, if you're going to go, and she finds new information about where Abby is, if you go and try and find her, me and the kid aren't staying. There's no way. Because you have to choose us or revenge, and she chooses revenge. She goes off. I won't spoil what happens. It doesn't end well for either of them. She comes back and the family's gone.
Yeah, this is why I watch Bridgerton.
So the point being, right, and the whole point of this game and the whole point of this story is that revenge is just a cycle.
Yes.
And the only thing that revenge leads to is more sadness and hurt and pain.
Yeah.
And the whole point is realising that the only reason Abby killed Joel in the first place is because she was wronged. She was enacting her own cycle of revenge.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's reasons for there's always a reason.
Always.
And you can't just pick the side that you want to and think that you are the just one in enacting revenge, because it's just a cycle and it only leads to more.
Yeah. And God said to me something earlier when you were just launching in, and I didn't want to stop you.
Yeah.
That forgiveness is the only true fulfillment. It's actually not revenge. We're actually called to forgive and to leave the revenge and that peace, the wrath of God or whatever you want to call it, to the Lord. And only then, when you seek forgiveness, will you feel the true fulfillment.
Because Ellie has multiple opportunities to forgive.
And she chooses
and
not
she's
to.
urged by other people, just let it go. Let it go. You've got everything now. You have a family. You've found a home.
And she doesn't.
And she can't help herself. She goes and does it anyway. And that's her downfall.
Oh, I'd watch that. I think I'd have to watch it in the daytime because it'd make me nervous and upset.
Yeah, there's zombies and shit in it as well.
Oh, maybe I'll just stick with Bridgerton.
Yeah, but it's that, and I think the value of stories like that is that you empathise with, because you've spent a whole season or a whole game with Joel.
Yeah.
You understand.
You love Joel.
How furious, how completely despondent, how life all of a sudden isn't as worth living as it once was because this father figure has just been cruelly and, from her perspective, unfairly just taken. You totally get, and you feel, that's the whole point, is you
and
feel
are you happy when he then goes and kills the doctor?
Well,
you go, take that, you bastard.
No, I think the whole point of that is that he chooses her over humanity.
Ooh.
Because she's got to die for humanity to find a cure to this virus, and he loves her so much. And the creators of this TV show have said that the whole point, the vibe, or not the vibe, the theme of the show is love, and how love can actually trump everything else, even in an irrational way. So all of a sudden, Joel's in this opportunity to save humanity, but he can't do it because he can't let Ellie die. So he chooses the love for his newfound daughter figure.
Yeah.
Trumps, that takes priority over the entire human race.
What was that terrific series that your generation used to watch when you were young, and they were vampires and they went and sucked blood, and then there was the really beautiful man, and they were the head of the blood-sucking family, and then there was Taylor Lautner was the wolf.
Twilight.
Oh, it's got Twilight overtones, hasn't it?
I've
because
never seen
doesn't she
Twilight,
get her blood sucked and then she becomes one of them, and she has to join that family, yet she really loves the other one. It's like a moral dilemma. She loses her humanity to go and join the bloodsuckers.
Haven't seen it.
Anyone listening, I've just butchered that story, I'm sure.
So I think the reason I bring this up is, on the one hand, if you take revenge, it's the fantasy of it is the thing that actually provides any sense of fulfillment. And if you actually go and act on it, you're just left hollow.
Totally.
Whereas, like you just said, forgiveness.
Yeah, it's the true fulfillment.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's actually the greatest. What is that thing about that you talked about, the cup of revenge? Is there something served cold?
Oh, revenge is a dish best served cold. That's an old saying. Yeah.
It is. It's just just forgive, let it go, and that will be fulfillment enough. And it's one of the, in the Beatitudes, God talks about this is how we need to be. We need to be peaceful. We need to be forgiving. We need to have mercy. This is one of the things we need to be like. We need to emulate that behaviour. And that's the behaviour that Jesus, don't want to get all preachy, but that's what he said.
Oh, and you can
come and follow me, brothers and sisters.
Yeah, and
I'll teach you how to behave.
The clearest example is him being mocked and beaten and stripped on Good Friday, and he was innocent in the eyes of the law. He's innocent. We know this, and he knows it, and really, it's like Caesar knows it. And the crowd are being whipped up into action to do this, even though they kind of all know he didn't do anything wrong. He has every right to stand up for himself, and he doesn't.
No.
And I say this a lot, but like the amount of ego that requires, like you have to kill that
park.
ego. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, the complete death of self.
Yeah.
Like,
Isn't that
I
scriptural?
still have that childlike feeling whenever anything slightly wrong happens
Irks
to
you.
me that it's like, oh, that's not fair. You have that like purely
Fleshy response.
yeah, it's almost like a purely financial, I'm owed this. They did this to me, so therefore I'm owed this amount of payback. Like, you know?
Right.
And I think we all feel that often.
It's very
And
human to feel like that.
And the challenge is to go, no, Jesus calls us to,
Yep.
if our enemy's hungry, feed them.
Yep.
Yeah, let them be the dick.
Yep.
Yeah, that's almost the
Yep.
way of thinking about it.
Oh, what a great one.
Yeah, it's challenging.
Yeah.
It's challenging. Yeah.
Did you think we sold forgiveness well?
Yeah, for $9.99 in
Steak
bulk, you get it
knives.
even cheaper. Yeah, even cheaper. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a challenge for us and for our listeners as well. It's like, is there someone in your life? Certainly, someone immediately springs to mind for me. Not that I've been wanting to take revenge, but that's still that unresolved conflict lying in the background. Is there someone in your life or some situation that you haven't forgiven? Certainly in my experience, it takes a lot of courage and it's really difficult to commit to that forgiveness. But when you do, the weight that just lifts off your shoulders.
Relief.
Like,
100%.
yeah.
Hard to forgive somebody that's not repentant, though. That's really tough.
It is hard. And in forgiving, you almost have to like relinquish any feeling of like wanting to bask in that fantasy of like, because if you're forgiving them, then it's done. It's done. You can move on. You don't have to sit there.
And God knows the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess one of the things in letting things go and forgiving is that not only God knows the truth, you know the truth, they know the truth.
Yeah.
And maybe eventually everyone else will know the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In time.
In time.
Yeah.
Kind of like that, your example that you shared with your childhood.
Yeah.
Everyone knows about her now.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That matters.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I guess to wrap up, we heard last year about God gave you a word.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you,
Yeah.
because you'd said maybe this year you were going to ask for another word.
Yeah.
I'm already kind of prompting you in a certain direction. The question originally was going to be, what's God doing in your life, Ness, at the moment? But I kind of already know.
Yeah,
so
I told you.
for our listeners,
Yeah.
maybe you could retrace that story.
Yeah, sure.
and
Well,
go
the
from
year
there.
before last, I said to God, my neighbour leant across the beautiful Carol, leant across and said on the 1st of Jan, Ness, has Jesus given you a word? And I said, no. And then she said, you need to ask God for a word. And I said, okay, I'll ask God for a word. Prayed and God gave me a word and he gave me WAF, W-A-F. And I Googled what that meant and I felt like God was sitting back kind of with his having a giggle at me and said, Ness, you're going to need to be wise as the F-bomb in 2023. And it's interesting now that I'm in the start of 2024, I needed to be very WAF last year. And I was very grateful that I was WAF last year. So it's the 28th of December. It's between Christmas and New Year. And I was jumping in the waves at Whale Beach. And it was beautiful. They were just, I felt like I was a kid back in the waves. It was just rolling waves. You jump up high enough and before they crash, sand up my nose or up my bum. It was just beautiful. It was just like, it was idyllic. I could have been anywhere in the South Pacific and doing my thing. It was just gorgeous. And I was floating on my back in between the waves and I said to God, okay, Lord, a couple of days to go. You've got time to think about it. I'm just wondering, looking at creation, I'm saying, Lord, have you got a fresh word for me for this year? I'd really love a fresh word. And like almost before I finished the sentence, God says to me, brave and sensible. And I say to God, sort of with the shits, look, do you want to take a few extra days to think about it? Because you kind of rushed it. you sure you don't want to? I don't want to be sensible, Lord. I don't like sensible's boring. Please don't make me be sensible. I think that's a shit word, actually, Lord. Can you give me? Actually, can I put that back in and can we have another crack at it? Take your time.
Hit refresh.
Yeah, don't rush. Anyway, I sort of got out of the water and I must have had an attitude as I'm stomping up the sand to Rob, and he says, "Yeah, everything okay?" And I said, "Oh, shit, Rob, I've just asked God for a word." He said, "Oh, excellent. Has he revealed that to you yet?" I said, "Yeah, I wasn't expecting it to happen so quick." He said, "What did he say?" I said, "Oh, bloody brave and sensible." And he said, "Wow, sensible. What a great word." I said, "It's not a great word. That means I'm going to have to like be all bloody posh and grown up and start being, like a grown up." And he said, "I think you should Google sensible." So I dried my hands and I reached in my bag, I pulled out my phone and I Googled sensible. Guess what it says? With wisdom. So I think the Lord is just giving me an extension of WAF.
The sequel.
It is a sequel that I'm going to need this year to be brave and sensible. And so I'm really stepping into the year with the word, holding it tightly to me. And it's actually really peaceful, actually. It feels quite calm being sensible and placing that wisdom lens over everything that I do. Feels good. Feels really good. Doesn't feel boring at all. Feels okay.
Yeah.
It actually feels a bit clever. Feels a bit smart.
Can I ask about the brave bit as well?
Yeah.
How does that resonate with you?
Well, I know why I need to be brave. There's a couple of things I need to be brave about. We're selling a home at the moment and brave about decisions we're making about what's next and where we're going to live and financial decisions that we've got to make and next stage of our life. So that's needing a bit brave. I've got a few other personal things going on that I need to really be brave about, that I'm a bit nervous about. So I need to sort of step into that. And brave in ministry, brave to make decisions, brave to continually turn up and be the Jesus chick. That takes a level of bravery, and boldness really to constantly live into that and to do it in a sensible way. So that's what the brave piece is speaking to me at the moment, and I just keep coming back to God. I actually thanked God the other night for the words. Didn't like them at first, hoping he would giving me like a part 2 download. And by the way, in brackets, Ness, thanks for asking, but it never came. So yeah, thanks for asking. I'll update you as more is revealed. We are in a season of epiphany, so I'm kind of glad that I've had a revelation of what the Lord wants from me for 2024. Part awesome. Thereof anyway.
Yeah. That's great.
It is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I feel a bit blessed that God would speak to me so overtly like that.
Yeah, it's certainly something. Whenever I hear you talk about interactions with God like that, I kind of get a bit jealous.
Bloody ask, mate. Have you asked?
Yeah, I've asked.
Yeah, just keep asking.
Yeah.
Are you listening?
Well, that's the challenge, and that's has always been a challenge, is that intentional listening element. And listeners might have heard an episode I did recently with Will Small, Spiritual Misfits, talking about prayer. And the challenge, a hump that I always have to get over, is getting past the list, the shopping list that you sometimes come to God with and go, time to pray. All right, I'm going to pray for this, and this.
Yeah.
Now go back to the beginning and pray for them again.
Right.
Instead of what prayer can and should be is actually just sitting and being in communion with God.
That's it.
And listening.
Yeah.
Certainly, I mean, at time of recording, I'm coming up to a couple of weekends and some leave as well that I'm sort of looking forward to for a lot of reasons, but largely because I think I'll have the time to really unplug everything else and spend a bit of time listening, I think.
So good.
Yeah.
And you've just got to be, it's about intentionality.
Yeah.
That's what I find.
Yeah.
And you've got to sort of carve out space and just go, yeah.
That's it. Yeah. I've got a week up at Shoal Bay coming up that I'm just going to
Bless.
totally unplug. So
You and the dolphins, man, jumping over waves.
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear what God gives you.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully it gives me some inspiration for a book. That's what.
That'd be good.
That's also what I'm doing up there. Yeah.
So good.
Yeah,
That's
exciting. Which I can talk about another time.
Mm.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Any final thoughts, Ness, before we close this thing out?
Oh, do you want to talk about our little fresh next venture?
Yeah, actually, that's at time of recording, we haven't quite settled on a title yet, but we are going to be spreading our wings a little bit and launching a second show. My hard drive's all just flinched. It'll be a little... We're going to try and keep ourselves to 10 minutes.
A Jesus show.
A Jesus show. We're going to be doing little 10-minute bites just on more of like a Bible study kind of vibe.
Stuff Jesus says.
Yeah. Going into opening scripture and reading some Bible and then unpacking it.
But fast and furiously.
Yeah, so I think, Ness talks about when we've been sort of doing some vision planning for this sort of thing, you love the Hope 1032 little...
Oh, I love those bites.
Bite-sized...
they make me excited.
Yeah, so that's kind of the vision and the vibe for it.
Because there's a real skill. It's easy to meander in a conversation back and forth forever, but to succinctly put it into a 10-minute slot is actually going to take a huge level of skill and clever mastery, I think, about the bits we choose to talk about.
Absolutely.
Because we can unpack for hours on any piece of a scripture, but I suppose what we both think about it, what other theologians say about it, and then maybe even, as you suggested, a call to action on the piece.
Yeah, so it's going to be we're going to be really enforcing the 10-minute limit, but also the we'll be reminding everyone that what we talk about isn't the interpretation, it is an interpretation.
It's just ours.
Really encouraging listeners to, as we do anyway, but specifically with that, because it'll be for a slightly different audience, to really take it as one interpretation and challenge people to come up with their own and really think critically about what we're talking about. So, we'll probably put the first one or two of them in this podcast feed if you're interested, and then it'll be its separate thing. For example, today we talked about some stuff in Romans and we passed over it very glancingly and kept talking about it in a broader sense. This new show will be...
take a bit of a dive.
We'll dive deeper into that. So if that's something you're interested in, we'll let you know when that is launching. This show will continue uninterrupted. So if you're worried, oh no, they're not doing Filthy Hope anymore, they're doing that boring Bible stuff.
No,
don't you worry.
No, don't leave us. Don't leave us.
And also that's not to say that we're not going to be talking about the Bible in this show.
No. We talk about Jesus because that's who we are.
Exactly. Right. So name to be decided. If you've got an idea for a name, we'd love to hear it as well. At this point, there's no release date locked in and we don't even have a name, but we're doing some recordings and trying some things out. It'll be
practice.
Really exciting. Yeah. I think that does us.
It does.
Yeah. If this resonated with you in any way and have anything you want to share with us, please, we'd love to hear from you. You can email us at filthyhopepod@gmail.com, or you can find us on social media. We would love... if you want to, we'd love you to join us on our Facebook group. We've had a number of people join us recently in the wake of that crossover episode we did with Spiritual Misfits. So if anyone listening that's jumped over from there, welcome. We're so glad to have you. So if you want to join us there and interact with us a little bit more directly and chat about some of the topics that we talk about on the podcast and meet new people, and there's some more stuff that I've got planned for that community over this year that I'm really excited to talk about when they happen. If you want to be in the loop for those, join the group. The link is down below.
Awesome.
We'll see you there. Until then, I'm Jonty.
I'm Ness.
This has been Filthy Hope. We'll see you next week.
This is a prayer for the people who want to give up, who have been hurt beyond repair and cannot bear to see your face in anything. Find peace in letting go of the guilt that is in yours, and find hope in understanding. Life is not a game you have to win. Forgiveness overwhelming. salvation undeserving. You are loved by something beyond, someone beyond understanding. Drink deep